Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening or good morning, depending on the time zone that you're at right now. It is 1 minute past. Normally, we start the webinars quite punctually in order to honor the people who dial in on time, but there might be some people dialing in the next couple of minutes. So we would suggest let's start. Who is participating in this call? So we have had quite a few registrations from all sorts of companies out of our network, customers, peers, and partners, and also the company Tresorit. We decided to share this webinar with you because this topic has been dominated many of the management and C-level conversations, bridging whether it is a processing which has to be done or whether it is a fundamental consideration about where is the data actually in my company, where are we creating data relevant for our decisions or data which we have to manage still and assure in terms of compliance. It is a big topic, it is complex, but it has been from our perspective as Intergroup, a very healthy way of taking decisions and understanding some fundamentals of the data. So a little bit about us. What does Intergroup does? Intergroup is a service company which helps investors and company owners with growth and innovation. We offer 3 types of services ranging from revenue enhancement to M&A scouting. So we have a service fee model. We are on a project transactional models. We are a distributed organization in UK, Germany, Switzerland, and we have a satellite office also in the US, which means we are pretty much working in the cloud. We are working with confidential data and processes, and we do have a very high level of trust and information about our customers and markets. We have also on the presentation today who's going to co-host this presentation and start with it, Petra Kovacsics. She's the legal data and protection counsel at Tresorit. And Tresorit, maybe Petra, you want to introduce Tresorit shortly, is our technology partner with whom we have executed a part of this process.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone, and thank you for the introduction. I am a legal and data protection counsel of Tresorit. We are a Swiss startup company providing cloud-based solutions for cloud sharing. And in the next couple of minutes, we will talk about our specific product and our end-to-end encryption that we use during the course our file sharing. So perhaps let's kick off. So as you may know, the General Data Protection Regulation is enforceable since the 25th of May. This is a new law and it regulates data protection law across the European Union. Its main aim is to harmonize data protection laws across European countries and also to enhance the data protection rights of individuals. I think probably most of you have already heard about this regulation because in the last couple of months, almost all European companies and organizations were preparing in order to be compliant with the new regulation. However, this new regulation does not affect only European-based companies. And if we go to the next slide, we specified the scope of the GDPR and as you may see, the scope of the GDPR is very, very broad. And besides companies that are registered within the EU, it also affects those companies who, while not established within the European Union, but nevertheless somehow processes personal data of individuals who are in the EU. you must also keep in mind that the definition of personal data is quite broad. So if you are a company that collects any information that relates to an individual, and as a result of this information, an individual can directly or indirectly be identified, you will probably be under the scope of the GDPR. And as on the next slide, we can see the GDPR aims to protect personal data at all stages of data processing. So if you collect or process personal data, even if you delete personal data, you must comply with the GDPR. What does the GDPR requires from organizations? Well, it has many very specific provisions, but to sum up, the GDPR requires companies to process personal data in accordance with the basic principles of the GDPR. In particular, it requires companies to process personal data fairly, lawfully, and in a transparent manner. What is also important that under the GDPR, you are not only required to process data in a compliant manner, but you must also be able to demonstrate that, in fact, your processes are compliant. The other very new approach of the GDPR is that, and we can move to the next slide, please, is that companies must have privacy in mind from the very beginning when they plan their projects. This means that companies and organizations are required to implement sufficient technical and organizational measures in order to be GDPR compliant. And the solutions that Tresorit provides can help companies to implement such measures. In particular, Tresorit product allows you to keep control over your data when documents or information is shared within your company. It also provides you the option to set up passwords, download limits, and expiry date to further protect confidential documents. And in particular, it provides a secure way of sharing documents. You must keep in mind that the GDPR is a framework regulation, i.e. it does not specify the particular technical and organizational measures that you must implement. However, there are some security measures that are specified in the GDPR, and one of those is encryption. As you can see on the next slide, not only the GDPR itself, but some guidelines that has been developed since the implementation of the GDPR also specifies encryption as a specific security measure that prevents exposure and unauthorized access. And in particular, end-to-end encryption is named as the strongest guarantee of confidentiality. What is end-to-end encryption? Let's move to the next slide, where we tried to show you the different types of encryption. One type of encryption is server-side encryption. In case of server-side encryption, data is encrypted. However, it is encrypted only after it has left your device, and usually service providers, in case of server-side encryption, keeps the keys together with the encrypted files. What does it mean in practice? It cannot be excluded that somehow on the way of the data may be somehow hacked before it reaches the server provider's servers. And also, theoretically, there is a possibility that the service provider might be able to decrypt your data. On the other hand, if we move to the next slide, in case of end-to-end encryption, all data is encrypted and decrypted on the user's device. This means that in case of the end-to-end encryption that we use at Tresorit, we never store passwords or encryption keys on our servers. And as a result, Tresorit is unable to access users' data in an intelligible format. So let's see the next slide. You may ask, what are the benefits of client-side or end-to-end encryption? First of all, the GDPR sets out a notification requirement in case of a potential data breach. If you use end-to-end encryption, then you have protection against confidentiality and integrity data breaches. That means that in case of a server-side breach, only encrypted and unintelligible data can leak at the very most. So there is a very good chance that the data breach notification requirement will not apply, and that you can avoid the pretty high fines under the GDPR. End-to-end encryption also simplifies your compliance process. As I have mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, under the accountability principle, data controllers must be able to demonstrate their compliance. And well, a little bit more than that, because as a data controller, you must not only demonstrate that yourself are in compliance with the GDPR, but if you outsource certain of your activities, for example, to a cloud service provider, you must be also able to show that your service providers are also in compliance with the GDPR. If you use a cloud service provider that uses end-to-end encryption, you don't really have to worry about that, because from our perspective, the content of the files is not considered as personal data, because in fact, no personal data is transferred to us. Also, it helps you to manage consent compatibility, what we call consent compatibility, with ease, i.e., since we cannot access the content of your stored files, we will, of course, not use it for any other purposes than the original purpose for what you have collected the personal data. And I think this is the point when I would like to hand back the slides to my colleagues.
Thank you. So Petra has explained very well the benefits of this end-to-end encryption. If we forget about the technical part of it, what you want as a CEO driving projects across countries with confidential data and also with cloud platform-based platforms, for example, our sales process, our deal management process, also data. And the worst that you can imagine is not going through compliant processes with big, large accounts like Hitachi or NEC, as well as a team not using correctly data encryption. And we want it easy. And security and safety is something that all of us want to have, but nobody wants to feel. And when we decided how to apply the data management and the softwares that we use to make this safe, that played a very important role. Because although we had a good process already from the past years, the different types of encryptions for different types of projects would make it difficult, and sometimes people were not using it appropriately. I want to share with you that the way we have done it, according to our business, and as Petra said, is not about the encryption around only, it's very important about the process. And I think that what this law generates, one of the positive things, is that we think about what type of data and what is the classification of these common data elements that we have. Are there internal documents or company knowledge assets that we build up, or is it customer data, which is very well specified by the regulation, or it is more transactional data on M&A part, or other security type of data. We have created this very simple guideline for our team members, and in the past we would have, so we have the level 1 of projects, which we used to not encrypt, but we had a cloud platform managing that data, and it was an employee-only access. The second part, we were using an encryption software, which would make it very difficult, and it would limit that our team, only part of team had access, and it would use a different type of software. And the third level are very confidential projects where and they are used their own PCs and their own systems. So applying Tresorit has been essential for us because it's easy. There is no excuse for anybody not to use it. It's embedded in the process. We use it for document management as well as for managing different types of accesses. And this is something, this type of end-to-end encryption we didn't have in the past. Therefore, we feel comfortable to say that our customer data is safe. And we are being asked also by compliance department from large corporates to prove it. And the story that we have set up between the process we have and how we encrypt it, it works for us. We also want to show some other examples in the next slide also how Tresorit can help any company beyond Intergroup making the company compliant. Again, with Tresorit, hackers, they do not have at all a possibility to read the content. And Tresorit is a player, as Petra said in the last point before, that doesn't use or has access to this information. So no personal data can leak in this case. And fines can be avoided by using that. That was one of the main reasons for us going for this system. We have another one in the next slide. So this is also how Tresorit can help avoiding errors concerning data breach. So I was mentioning how good is the usability. We know the software and also the companies since some years ago, it has evolved dramatically, and it has very good tools concerning limit of access, viewing the users and managing so that you also can avoid accidental access to files. This is another example how Tresorit can facilitate this onboarding and offboarding, especially when you are working with contractors. This is something we do at Intergroup. We have some industry experts which are contracted to us. It's a considerable part of process and work to make sure that everybody has handled the data, which data, tracking them. So that's quite a thing. And with Tresorit, this can be easily removed, and it has some easier track. There is an advanced control features so that they make sure they cannot log in. So all this functionality, what Tresorit DRM allow us to do, it helps us a lot to explain how do we deal with the data with our customers. And ultimately, we want it nice and easy. We want to be compliant. We want to have a good understanding of what data takes place where and how to manage it. And for that, we need something which we almost cannot feel. So basically for us, Tresorit has simplified a lot the communication towards our customer as well, the internal operations. That's the end of the webinar, but we always give some time for asking questions. So the information we have shared here, and also these links you can see, it will be sent to everybody on email. But Petra and us as the users are here, so you can ask us questions now, as well as drop us an email anytime through the webinar link. And we are happy to answer your questions and help your queries. So is there any question from anyone, since Petra is a lawyer and she can provide you much more better qualified insight to your business than I can do? Please go ahead.
Does Tresorit, this is Michael speaking, also provides pseudonymization, and how does it help in compliance with pseudonymization?
Mm-hmm. I would like to point out that our product is mainly focusing on file sharing. So this is why encryption is especially important for that, and this is rather a product whereby you can be sure that the data that you store in the cloud will be totally encrypted, and that no one would have access to your files that may include personal data or other very confidential information. On the other hand, of course, as you have just mentioned, there are many other implications of the GDPR. There are other security measures that you may want to implement in order to mitigate your risks. One of them can be pseudonymization, but this is something different from what we do provide.
And at the moment, from our company perspective, if you talk about normalization on the way we conduct and execute processes, we have by every of the 3 services that we offer a process and methodology, how do we provide those services. And this is something which had less to do with the GDPR, but it's something which is part of a full explanation on compliance on the GDPR. We have shown only the way which makes it very operational for us. And that's, as a company, we want to say we are not trying to sell Tresorit. We was our initiative to say, hey, this is really good for us. Let's share with our customers, let Intergroup share with our Intergroup customers how we have done it. Because honestly, really at the C-level, you have a lot of conversations like that, what are you using? How are you doing it? And this is, so that was the intent of this call.